the storytellers that I always knew growing up and I was always told about are revered in my culture. Storytellers are revered. They're sages. They're sages. They're enlightened people. And because they want to convey the truth through story, because they know that stories touch us deep inside. They know that that is how we all relate to the world in some way, is to understand the story of it. So I'm going to tell you a story. Many of us in different ways, we're aware about climate change, we're aware about environmental issues, we care deeply about our planet. Many people call her Mother Earth. I do, because that's the culture that I come from. She is my mother. And so what we have to understand when we learn about the different stories around the world is that actually this story of what is happening right now has been told many times over. Many times over. So once, there was a time when the Supreme Personality descended to earth. Supreme. Supreme in beauty. Supreme in truth. Supreme in knowledge. Supreme in love. Supreme in strength. And supreme in compassion. And that Supreme Personality descended upon this earth. Not just in one form, but in many, many different forms that manifested all at the same time. And when they did that, one of those forms was Krishna, who was in the form of the Divine Masculine. He also manifested in the form of the Divine Feminine, as Radha, and in many, many multiple different forms. And he manifested as a cowherd, a simple cowherd living in a village, with no technology, with no knowledge, ignorant. All they did was tend to the cows, work in the forests, gather the foods, harvest the foods that they sowed, and lived a very simple life. And these simple people that he lived amongst, they had a tradition. They had a tradition where they would worship Indra. Indra was the king of the sky. They would worship Indra so that he would bring the rain. And in our scriptures, we believe that there's like a hierarchy of like spiritual deities. So like God is like the supreme, and then you have like the next layer who are like, he's the king and he has all of these ministers in his court, and they're like the celestial beings. And they're the people in charge of nature. He's put them all in charge of nature, that you're going to regulate the water, you're going to regulate the wind, you're going to regulate the fire, you're going to regulate all of these different things. So Indra is the king of all of these celestial powers. So the people, the simple people, they thought, well, we have to worship Indra because he brings the rain, and without the rain, all of nature will be destroyed. Without the regulation of nature, without the correct seasons, everything will go wrong. So they used to perform a fire sacrifice to Indra, where they would bring everything and they would offer it to Indra. Indra became used to this. Indra really liked this. It went to his head. And so Krishna, the Supreme Personality, when he saw that the simple people were doing these things, he said, why? Why are you doing this? And they said, because if we don't, Indra will get angry. He won't bring the rain. And then the cycle of the seasons will be destroyed. And then our livelihoods will be destroyed. We'll be destroyed. There won't be any food. And he said, why will Indra be angry? And they said, because we're supposed to worship him. He said, why are you supposed to worship him? And they said, because he's God. And he said, what kind of God gets angry when you don't worship him? And they said, well, Indra. And he says, maybe then he's not God. And they say, well, but this is how it's always been. And he says, maybe it's time to change. And so, one by one, he convinced all of them that this sacrifice that they wanted to do to the one with all the power, they weren't going to do that sacrifice anymore. They weren't going to give everything that they worked for to one who should be simply doing his duty. Because all of us should simply be doing our duty. Everything that we do, we should do in service to others, not because we want something back from it. That was what Krishna was teaching them. And what he was teaching them was that worship should never be about fear. Was that no God would get angry at you just because you don't worship him. God is about love. And in love, there is no place for fear, there is no place for jealousy, there is no place for force and aggression. So he said these things, and he turned them all away. And then Indra heard about it. And he said, "What did you say?" to his messenger. And his messenger said, the earthlings didn't forgive the sacrifice this year. And he said, What did you say? And the messenger is cowering. He's like, I'm sorry, my lord. They didn't give anything. And Indra said, who do these earthlings think they are? I'm the one who brings the rain. I'm the one who regulates the seasons. I'm the one who makes everything work. Well, I'll just go show them. Now, Indra's wife, Shati Devi, she says, my husband, I think that maybe you might be overreacting here. I think that maybe there might be something we should learn from this. And he says, what could there possibly be to learn? And she says, well, I went and had a look, and there's someone called Krishna over there, and there are all of these signs around Krishna that indicate that this is the Supreme Personality. That would be our boss. We should probably listen to what he's saying. Indra says, no. Krishna would never stop the earthlings from worshipping me. He would never stop me from getting my due. I'm entitled. And he tells them this. He tells his wife this. He tells all his messengers this. He ignores her. Patriarchy. And he says, go. And he says to all of his messengers, all of his servants, who are all the different elements, right? They are the different hurricanes, the different storms, all of these beings that serve him. He says, go and cast your wrath upon these people who have dared to defy me. And all of the storms in the entire world descended upon this land. The land was called Vrindavan. It's a place in India. And they descended. And out of nowhere, these clouds appeared. Out of season, dark, black, ominous clouds. And the people looked up and they were afraid. They were so afraid. They didn't know what this meant, but they knew Indra was angry. And all of a sudden, the clouds broke, the thunder crashed, the lightning crashed, and the clouds opened up, and it was like the ocean was dropping upon them. They couldn't see, they couldn't hear, and everyone ran as one to Krishna's house. And they said, well, look what you have done. You have brought Indra's wrath upon us. And Krishna said, nothing. He said nothing. He simply looked up at the sky. He looked all around. And then he walked out of his house and he walked down the lane. And all of the people didn't know where he was going. They didn't know what he was doing, but they knew that they needed shelter. All of their houses were collapsing around them. The waters were flooding. The entire livelihood of everything that they had was just washed away. And they knew they needed shelter, so they ran after him, expecting him to save us, to save us all, because he's got us into this mess, right? You told us not to give to those in power. You told us to defy power. You told us not to be afraid. You better save us now. And he didn't say anything, but he walked and he walked and he walked and he walked to Mount Govardhan. There was a mountain there. And in the course of convincing them all that they needed to stop this worship of fear, he had taught them to worship the mountains. He had taught them to worship Govardhan, that caught the clouds, that brought the rain, where the medicines grew, where the cows grazed, where the trees grew, where the rivers descended from. He taught them worship Govardhan. Give back to the mountain. All of the food that we eat, all of the nutrients that we have, they come from the mountain, they come from the earth. Worship that. That is what gives us all of the things that we have. And so they had begun to practice sacrificing towards the earth. Whatever they had, the grains, the fruit, the water, the milk, whatever they possessed, they went and they sowed into the land. They composted. They gave back to the land. Krishna took them to that mountain. He took them to Mount Govardhan. And as they watched, saying, screaming, Krishna, find us shelter. This mountain is no shelter from the rain, because even if we were to climb up it, the rain is so bad, we will all die. The storm is too bad. There's no shelter from the thunder, from the lightning. What are we going to do? And Krishna says nothing. And he reaches down into the earth. He puts his arm down, and as he's standing there, reaching his arm down underneath into the earth, the people are wondering what he's doing, and he goes further, and he goes further, and he goes further, until they realize that the mountain is shifting. And he goes further, and he goes further, and he goes deeper, and they realize the mountain is lifting. And he goes further, and he goes further, and they realize he is lifting the mountain. And when they look closer, they realize that he is holding the mountain upon the little finger of his left arm. The weakest finger of his weakest hand, of his weakest arm, of the weakest part of his body. He is holding this entire mountain up, and he told them, come and bring all the animals. Not just you. Don't just save you. Save all the other living beings around you. And they all came, amazed, in wonder. They could not understand how he was doing this, but they thought in their simplicity, because he told us to worship the mountain, maybe it is the God of the mountain who is allowing himself to become light, and who is allowing himself to be lifted up to provide shelter. And all of the people came under the mountain, all of the cows, all of the animals, all of the monkeys, all of the life that was there came under the mountain for 7 days and 7 nights, as the storm raged and raged and raged. And Indra was throwing everything that he had at them, until his servants came to him and they said, we're run out of rain. And he said, what? And they said, yeah, we're run out of rain, there's no more rain. And they were like, because see, the thing is when the rain falls on the earth, and then the sun has to come out and evaporate, and then that's how we make more clouds, and so it doesn't rain. And Indra was like, I'm gonna go, well, okay, fine, I'll go take care of it. So he goes, and he's like, all right, I'm gonna use my own weapons, right? He's like the servant of God. He's got all these weapons, really powerful. So he tries to throw his Shakti weapon. Shakti, infallible. Shakti means power. Shakti is the divine feminine. That's what Shakti is. He tries to throw Shakti at them. He becomes paralyzed. His arm becomes paralyzed. He tries to throw Shakti at them here. His other arm becomes paralyzed. He tries to speak curses at them, because that would also destroy them. His own mouth becomes paralyzed, and he realizes he has no power. And Krishna is still standing there holding up the mountain, and the people are defying him. And it turns out he has no power beyond the will of the people. And when he realizes this, he becomes humble, and he repents. In his heart, he repented, and he asked his guru for help. He actually asked his guru. He said, Guru, help me. I don't know what to do in this situation. And his guru showed up, and he was like, it's a bit late, right? Why didn't you ask me for help earlier? Really, they could have avoided all of this. And Indra's like, no, I know. I'm really sorry. And his guru explains to him, what went wrong here? What do you think went wrong here? He's like, I think my ego maybe got in the way. And they're like, yes, yes, that's what happened. And so his guru advises him, it is time for you to surrender yourself. It is time for you to surrender to that beauty, to that love, to that knowledge, to that truth, to that compassion that is the Supreme Personality. And Indra surrenders himself. And when he does, the world comes back into balance. What is this story about? Is it just a story? The truth is, we are all Indra. We think that all of the life around us is here for us to exploit. We think that this earth is here for us to use for our pleasure. And we forget what our true purpose is. And so what this story is teaching us multiple different things. There's infinite layers of what this story is teaching us. But when I think of this, I think of the climate crisis. I think of the environmental crisis. I think of the root causes, right? Capitalism. Capitalism. We've got to give everything to the people at the top. Why? Because they demand it. What do they actually do for us? Nothing. They use the things we give them in order to oppress us. That's what they do. That's what Indra had started to do. And it was that Krishna came to correct. That was what Krishna was doing. That was why Krishna created this entire situation, was to make him realize his own mistake. How long is it going to be before we realize our mistake? That's the question. So when I hear this story, and when I tell this story, I think to myself, as a storyteller, it is my job to not only convey a message, but to convey a message that lives on in the hearts of those who hear it, in the hearts of those who read it, so that they can not only tell that story to others, but so that they can be that story, so that they can become one with that story, so that they can live that story. That's what storytelling is all about to me. Thank you.